Hey guys, so I'm wanted to show you where I'm at. I'm standing in Vermont right now, but if I turn around, what you're going to start to see is the banks of the Connecticut River. We are hundreds of miles from Connecticut from where I'm at, but this is the start of the Connecticut River, and it borders Vermont and New Hampshire. As you can I'm going to swing around, you're going to start to see on the other bank there, that is New Hampshire. So this Connecticut River serves as a border between Vermont and New Hampshire. So as I was kind of standing out here driving by, I started to think about what I was reading this morning in Ezekiel. I believe it's around 37. I know you hear the traffic driving by. I apologize if it's distracting, but it's a major route here. I think it's Route 5 that runs up here on the Vermont side of the Connecticut River. Anyways, so I was reading in Ezekiel 37, and it starts talking about the prophecy where he comes across he's out in the desert, and he comes across all these dry bones. I'm going to tell you, it's a really cool prophecy. If you haven't read through it here, what I'm going to encourage you today to do is go read through 37. Ezekiel 37, there's a lot there, really neat stuff. And 38. 38 starts talking about some pretty cool stuff about this guy Gog, who is no good, no bueno, if you will, coming from a region that's somewhere, as far as they can figure, somewhere north of Israel, and it's about how he's gonna, this guy's gonna lead an army and come down and attack Israel. It's a prophecy, and a lot of people think that while Russia's not mentioned, this is a prophecy about Russia, possibly some other surrounding areas who are kind of gonna have kind of anti-Semitic, if you will. They're gonna, have an issue with God's people and Christianity, but the Jews in particular. And so it's really cool. But back in 37, they comes across these dry bones, and they're just laying there, and there's no chance for life for these dry bones. They are, they are dead, laying on the ground in an arid area, and there's no good. But what he starts to see in his prophecy is these bones being raised up, and really the life that comes into these bones ends up serving as a resurrected army for the Lord, for God at the time. And so I started thinking about, my own bones and, how dry my bones were. And when God decided when I got to my end of my rope, if you were, and I had nowhere to turn to, all of a sudden, and I turned to God, He resurrected me. And those bones that were dry and bearing no fruit whatsoever, I'm telling you what, when He moisturizes my dry bones and my dry skin, I came back to life, and I found the anxiety that I was struggling with, which was severe. Each and every day I dealt with anxiety. I've talked about the depression, which was suicidal thoughts, that stemmed from the life I was living, and really, the things in my life I was doing put me on a downhill spiral, right? And so when I got to the bottom, and all of life had beat me down because of my own bad choices that were all choices that I'm making within myself, my own flesh, I ended up on the desert floor. My bones were dry, they were dead, there was no life in me, I was done. And yet here comes God, and He sprinkles water. Like, look at all the water behind me. That's cold water, but He sprinkles His resurrection power onto me through the waters of Jesus Christ. And I start to come up, and I start feeling like that, I could be the man God's called me to be. And so I start taking small steps. I didn't try doing everything at once. I don't think we need to be perfect in what we're trying to do. So when we start setting goals, especially godly goals, and we're praying through those goals to, to start to commune with Him, to know Him better, to get to really know His love, I think these are prayers that God delights in answering. And so He starts to build us up. He starts to resurrect our bones, and we start to bear fruit. And I started thinking about, like, as I stand behind me, this gigantic tree that is it's just a mountain on the riverbank here. I start thinking about, in Isaiah 61, where He talks about, I think it's 61, and I may be wrong, but He talks about setting the captives free. And I was a captive. I've been set free by Jesus Christ. By the grace of Jesus Christ, I've been set free. And He talks about you'll be raised up into righteous oak trees. All I'm saying is, let's plant the acorn into the ground. Let's start to water that with the water of Jesus Christ, getting to know God, to start to live our lives as best as we can in our, in the strength of God, not in our own strength, But we, just start taking the steps. Don't worry, you don't have to take a giant leap. I'm not going to jump into this Connecticut River. I'd freeze to death, right? But I can take small steps. As spring goes along, as the waters warm up, as the sun shines on this water, it's going to warm up. And give me a month, 6 weeks, maybe even less because I'm a bit crazy, but I might just go leap into the Connecticut River because it'll be refreshing. What I'm saying is take some steps. Let's work towards through the spring and the cold waters, and as it warms up, let's start to take a bath in that warm water. Let that tree grow. Let that plant the acorn tree, and then just keep watering it every day. Keep being disciplined in your walk and the goals that you set. So let's set some goals. Like I talked about yesterday, maybe less time on our phone. Well, just don't feel like you got to give it all up at once. Let's just set some goals. Let's set, and try to just make them obtainable goals. And each day, start working on it. Start growing that oak tree. Start growing that oak tree. And here's the deal. When you get to a point where all of a sudden you realize that God has planted you firmly in the ground and He has raised you up to be this righteous oak tree, and you stand among your friends and your family, and you're able to drop the acorns that you're producing so that they can pick them up and plant them. You think about how rewarding that will feel, because you were disciplined each day. Started with the baby steps, started with small steps, but because through that process you grow into this beautiful, righteous oak tree. And then you start, just imagine the grace and the peace that you can bring when you start sharing God's love and what He's done for you. Listen, for those who have been redeemed, you got to testify. Testify the goodness of God. All right, so y'all going to have a blessed day. I pray that you have a blessed day. Again, leave me any comments for your prayers. I'd love to pray for you, pray with you, whatever it's going to take to help you get started. Start planting those oak trees. Let's start watering those old dry bones of ours, and let's just start growing into the people, the men and the women that God's called us to be. Y'all have a blessed day.